Okay, being serenaded by our next door neighbor, Christian, we're back to these projects. Briefly, because business is starting to come in again, and where am I? There we go. I've been selling rockets and masks and busts and things, and it got real quiet for a couple months, but it usually does this time of year. But in between the lines, when I have a little bit of time, I'm working on this and hoping to get it done by Halloween. I'm going to be using Chavant clay on this. The lighting here really isn't that good. I'm going to come over here, and we see there's the side of Mary's face. And what I've done is I've smeared a bunch of clay on the surface of the stone. Now, normally I would probably just use, what is it, 1057? It's the two-part urethane material for making my molds and back plates, but we've always used ultracals for years in makeup effects, and I still like to use it. It's cheap, it's easy to work with, and for stuff like this, I mean, I'm not going to make a whole bunch of prosthetics for Mary, so or for myself, so I'm just going to kind of just smear some clay on here, and so this will be fine for what we need. So this is close to her hairline, so I can hopefully run the wiring for the lights out there. And I'm gonna blend that in like this. Seems like there's some other clay in there. And this is all you do, and then of course you sculpt it to look nice and smooth and contour to the face, and then you put in your wound or bullet head or whatever you want to do. You don't want to make it too raised up, although I'm sure that there would be some swelling caused by that, but then again, they're robots, so it would just be torn up silicone or whatever they would have used in the original Westworld robots before they became the sophisticated printed ones. So what I'm going to do is smooth this out a little bit more, and when we come back, I'm going to start putting in the detail. So I got this, I got a little texture on this looking like skin. You can see. And then I've been taking this tool here, and I'm just going to cut out some of the ripped up stuff and make it look like she lost a big chunk of her skin here. Yep. You get the general idea, as opposed to, there we go, and a little lower. So this will be where her skin actually is, and I don't want to raise this up too much because it always looks hokey. So I'm just going to kind of do this, like so. Make it look kind of ragged, like maybe she got, oh, it'd help if I stayed, I'm looking at the sculpture and I'm not paying attention to the angle of the camera. So just a little more stuff like that. Okay. And I probably, what I'm going to do is sculpt some business behind this, or maybe even just use some real wiring and stuff, because basically all I need is a prosthetic like this. And it shows the damage. Keep it in frame, Steve. And you can see now she's got a big open area there. All this down here has to be blended in more, and then we're going to put a flash around it. And what that will do is, of course, create the overflow, as we call it, or flash, depending on, what you like to call it. Some people call it flash, some people call it overflow. Actually, in the old days, back in the Werner Kepler, John Chambers studio days, we called them overflows. because that's what you're doing, is you're overflowing excess material from one part, from the part of the mold that you want to the part of the mold you don't care about. Now I'm going to leave it kind of ragged like this, like so, to give it that effect that something really grabbed this and pulled the skin away. And then of course there will be details underneath this and the lights, which I just got. And they're just basic LED, small, super small fairy lights as they call them. It's really hard, I want you to know, to sculpt and shoot with a camera at the same time. And that's about it. I mean, you know. So, you know, big chunk of her flesh has been pulled away, and there'll be some wiring and maybe a little metal plate and some blinking lights in there. And all we have to do is put that flash or overflow around the outside of the edge of this after I clean it up and make it a bit more precise. So here we go. We're back at this. We never stopped, actually. So you can see here in this real contrasty lighting what we've done. And what this is, of course, we've talked about before. This is the flash, the overflow. And if you look at some of Neill's encapsulated prosthetics, encapsulated mean that there's Baldy's encapsulation on these. These are quite old, but they're still good. These can still be used. You can see what's happening. Okay. You can see here with some of Neill's old silicone pieces. She gave me these years ago. These could still be used, and they're encapsulated in what we call Baldy's. And this is a plastic cap kind of material, and when you encapsulate the silicone with it, you can see the silicone. It's pink. It's very pink, and you can see the extra silicone here, the flash that comes over the side. We encapsulate it with Baldy's. Baldy's actually sticks to silicone when it's wet, and so it enables us to have a surface we can paint, we can glue to, and you can put paint on and makeup on, because you can't do that with straight silicone. You can paint silicone with silicone itself, but you're still not going to get it to stick to anybody's face. So you got to encapsulate it with this Baldy's material. And again, you can see the flash, and the flash is pretty far away from the actual prosthetic, and the reason for that is so we have all this material here to work with. This melts with 90% alcohol or 99% alcohol. You can just melt it into the skin. So it doesn't matter if these edges are thick, because the actual prosthetic itself is not. It tapers into the flesh, so you just need to smooth this down very carefully with a brush and some 99% alcohol. So I've done this one, and you know, this is how it looks in the raw. I didn't do a real pretty job because this is just for a Halloween costume. I mean, you can work for a while on this stuff and make it look all just perfect and stuff, but you don't need to if you just want to get a couple of prosthetics out. So we're going to move this one. This is Mary's. You can tell by the M on it. Over here. And we're going to do mine. Now, what I've done, since it's so cold today, and the clay is really hard to work with, I put it in the oven, and softened it up. But I can see in the lighting here, just, you know, it's not quite smoothed into the flesh all the way. So I want to do that. I can get away with a lot here because, after all, this is, you know, damaged robot skin. So I'm just going to kind of do that. Because the contrasty light, you can really see the edge quite well. Then I'm going to take an old orange peel, put back some of that texture. This I don't like here. I don't know what that is. But again, this is damaged flesh, so you go away with a lot, especially when you're blending it in, because it can be all ragged and stuff. You put bruising and blistering over it to give the effect of robotic skin that reacts like real skin, I suppose. It needs to look kind of torn and kind of stuck up like that. More the old days, they just would have done this with mortician's wax. So that's pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is put the flash around it. Okay, so here I'm smearing clay while it's been warmed up in the oven onto this so that the clay will stick, because when it's cold like this, it does not want to stick. So I kind of smear it around while it's real hot and buttery like. And then that way the clay won't keep popping off the stone casting or even your resin casting, depending if you use 1630 for your molds. Sorry, it's very, very, very noisy here today. So you can see how I've done that. There we go. So now I'm going to do is just take clay and put it right up to the, well, not right up to the edge, but close to the edge. And put it all the way down into here, you can see. All the way up to the edge over here. You see what I mean about, watch how easy that clay comes off of there if it's not, doesn't have the butter on it, as I call it. And you go around the keys. I sort of set the cell phone down and angling to you so you can see some of this. And of course, while I'm shooting video, Eddie is out there drilling for teens. So if you can't hear me that well, I'm sorry. Sounds like he's having a really good time. Yeah, if you don't heat this clay up, you can see how soft it is. It'll take you forever to do this. So you want the clay to be kind of like water-based clay. Thanks, Eddie. We will come back when I get this tidied up. Okay, so now I'm just taking a sharp wooden tool and I'm just precisely as you can taking this stuff off here. So we have some way for the keys to make contact with the surface and the key. And then around here, in the old days, we used to go right up to the edge as much as possible, because with foam rubber, you know, the blender edge of the foam rubber had to be as drop off to being as thin and cobwebby as possible, and that's why you needed to get these overflows right up close. Dick Smith was the one who really pioneered that. Back in the Planet of the Apes days, they just used to have a large gap like this, and the rubber was fairly thin at those points, and they used a lot of dual surgical adhesive in those days to blend off the edge. Especially if the edge wasn't thin enough, they would taper it out with the dual surgical adhesive, which worked really well. I used to do it all the time. So, but we don't need that anymore, not really. So, because, you know, if you have a lot of open area between the clay, where the clay ends and here, that's all going to be baldies. Silicone will stop where the clay stops, because the mold compresses it to that point.
Whoa. I didn't know you were there, dog.
And then the baldies make contact with the baldies, and then you have something you can blend off with the 99% alcohol. Here we are. We've got both of these have been Vaseline. I will Vaseline up all the exposed stone or surface area that's going to make contact with the mold, the actual female mold. right? Yeah, I guess. Anyway, and this is styrene wrapped around again, just like it did for the back plates. And I'm just going to mix up some Ultra Cal 30 and brush it in there and fill it up, and that's the mold. And I'm going to put fiber in it because these won't get heated, and they're going to be fine. So without the fiber, especially for a mold, I'll probably only use once. Okay, so here we have some nice Ultra Cal. Always wet your brush. Don't put it in there dry because otherwise it'll clog up on you. And I'm going to take these here. Somewhere around here I have a spritz bottle. There it is. I'm going to do a little bit of moisture down there because it helps. Well, it helps the material flow, so you don't have bubbles. I don't want bubbles. I don't care if I got bubbles in the flash. I don't want it in my prosthetic. So I'm putting that down there like that. I'm going to do this one next. We just need, you can see the way the water's being repelled by the Vaseline. Yes, Steve, Vaseline. Been using it for years making molds. There's other mold releases you can use. There's a spray, sort of Vaseline in a can called Zip, I think it is. I have some right here somewhere that you can spray on. It's aerosol. And we're going to just do this like this. You can see it repelling on the clay too, because the clay is, kind of like a wax oil base. It's oil based, so it's petroleum, more or less. I'll do this over here. See, I can do this with one hand. I took those darn gloves off. Okay. And it's kind of thick, what I mixed up. So also spritzing the water on the surface really helps. Get rid of the bubbles. More on there. Looks good. Then we're going to take the remainder and pour it on, like so. I'm recording, Mary. More than looks like I made up just enough. The last thing you want to do is hit your sculpture with that. I'm going to put this down. So that's basically it. I'll smooth this out a little bit after the material starts to set up, the Ultra Cal. But these will set up till tomorrow, and then tomorrow I'll be able to prep these to run silicone prosthetics, and I might even run some tomorrow and see how it comes out. So that's exciting. We will be getting back to this very soon, I promise. There's so much to do. I mean, I've got to get these servos mounted. I got to find an old receiver, which I have several of, as it turns out. So I'm going to not use modern equipment. I'm going to use the original old FM material that used these type of cords, jacks, and hook it up to the original radio, which, by the way, I just happen to have right here. This is the original radio used in all the TV shows and commercials that I did. I doubt it turns on still. No, it's deader than a doornail. But I bet you it still works. We're going to open it up, take a look inside in the next video. Okay, let's open these molds up. Thought that'd be good to do. We had a very long meeting last night with the Civil Air Patrol, which Mary and I are now members of. And we got here late, but I'm going to open these molds up. And we're going to take out that communion bust that was ordered by a customer out of its mold. And we'll take a look at these molds, and then I'm going to show you that this radio still works. That radio is from about 1985, 1986. I know for sure it was used on the last precinct, Gorillagram. Yeah, a lot of you didn't know that I did that. A lot of you didn't know I was in that gorilla suit. I've done a lot of gorilla work. So, and then we might pick at this a bit, but I think we'll do that more tomorrow. And don't Don't mind the car in the background. This is where we keep it at the studio. Anyway, let's get going. Here we are. This is the radio for the grill head, and I had to take it apart because I put a battery in it and it was not working. And when we've been in a pinch on set, we would use 9-volt batteries because these are 9.6, so a 9-volt will still run it. And you just push it up against here inside this here, but it wasn't working, so I had to clean the contacts off. And once I did, well, I'll show you what happened. So I'm just going to kind of connect this to here. See, that's the positive side. And we'll turn it around. That is positive, right? No, positive there. It was going backwards. So here we go. I'm going to show you that this still works. There you go. So it still works after all this time. And this is from 1985. There's nothing wrong with the electronics. I found an old receiver for it upstairs, and I'm gonna have to change the plugs because it's, you know, the receiver's from the 90s and or maybe in the early 2000s, but it's on the right channel, so I just have to get some adapter plugs, and once I do, I can get this running again. So that was great to find out. And again, I want to thank Rich Redhead from driving all the way up from OC, Orange County, to deliver these in person. It was also a pleasure meeting you. So that's going to help in case these are bad. So, but I don't think they are, but I may find one or two that aren't working. I see a lot of sweat got on them and caused some rusting down here. So that may be a problem. And if it is, these aren't rusted. So that's how far I've got so far. That's how far I got so far. And I did pull the casting out of the communion bus. This mold is from 2010, and it's amazing. It's still making a nice casting. This is very thick latex, and I'll be painting this up on Monday so it can go out to my customer. And I spent the last 2 days making up these two kits right here. I had orders for 2 resin cast B2 rockets, and those resin cast B2 rockets I thought were this one. They're similarly priced, not for long. I'm raising the price on them. This one's going to remain at $69. Of course, it's all handmade. The boat tail and the nose cone are resin cast also. This one here, the bigger one, is what's actually the resin cast, because the fins are resin cast, the boat tail's resin cast, and so is the nose cone. And it's very accurate to the real V2 rocket. There's some things that aren't exactly scale, but overall it's very scale looking, and it flies very scale because it's pretty heavy, and with a D in it, it sort of lumbers up there. With an E or an F engine, it goes much higher, much faster. But even with a D, it'll fly up to about 300 feet, very realistically, in the sense that it just comes off the runway, comes off the launch pad very slowly, like the real thing. It's pretty neat to see. And if you think, well, what's the difference between that and the Estes? There's the Estes next to it. And you can see the fins are much larger, and I think they did that for more stability. This rocket flies great. I love this rocket. These are balsa. The boat tail is blow molded, and so is the nose cone. But this one is actually a lot more scale, as you can see. And so I have 2 of these in the box that I wrongly made up, complete kits, ready to go. So if you're into rockets and you want a Steve Neill rocket or SNG Aero rocket, I have two that I made up by mistake that you can buy. Just go to my website, SNG Aero, and go to the store. It's the products page, the first one. Scroll down, you'll find the PayPal buttons. If you order these, I'll be happy to send them to you. They're ready now. See you in the next video.